Across the galaxy, there exists a phenomenon so terrifying that entire civilizations have built their religions around avoiding it. The Zephyrians call it the eternal hunger. The crystalline vortex whisper of the consuming void. The machine collective known as the Nexus Prime refers to it simply as critical system failure terminal. But humans? Humans looked at this cosmic horror that had claimed billions of lives across thousands of worlds and said, "Hold my beer." What the galaxy feared as an unstoppable curse of the universe, humanity saw as just another engineering problem. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's solving problems that everyone else has given up on. This is the story of how humanity took the galaxy's greatest nightmare and turned it into their greatest advantage. Commander Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table, her coffee growing cold as she processed what the alien delegation was telling her. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy from a dozen different species, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, and electronic tones. "You want us to do what now?" Sarah asked, setting down her mug with deliberate calm. Ambassador Zexhai of the Zephyrian Collective shifted his forearms in what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of uncomfortable fidgeting. His scaled hide shimmered from green to yellow, indicating high stress levels. "Commander Chen, perhaps we have not explained the severity of the situation clearly enough." "Oh, you've been crystal clear," Sarah replied, leaning back in her chair. "You want humanity to take responsibility for dealing with what you call the Devourers. Entities that have apparently been consuming entire star systems for the past 10,000 years. Creatures that exist partially outside our dimension and feed on both matter and energy. Things that have forced your people to abandon entire sectors of the galaxy." The crystalline representative from Vortac Prime chimed in, her voice like wine through crystal caves. "The consuming void has claimed 847 inhabited worlds in the last millennium alone. Our greatest minds have studied this phenomenon for eons. It cannot be stopped. It can only be avoided." Sarah nodded slowly. "Right. And you're asking us because?" Nexus Prime's mechanical avatar spoke with the voice of a trillion connected minds. "Human military doctrine demonstrates unique problem-solving capabilities. Your species approaches impossible scenarios with unprecedented creativity." Translation, Sarah said with a slight smile, "You've run out of ideas, and you're hoping the crazy new kids on the block might think of something you haven't tried in 10,000 years of running away." The chamber fell silent. Sarah could feel the weight of a dozen alien gazes, some hopeful, others resigned. She stood and walked to the massive viewport that showed the swirling nebula where humanity had built their first interstellar diplomatic station. "Tell me about the last encounter," she said without turning around. Ambassador Zexhai's scales shifted to a deeper yellow. "The Kepler 442 system. 3 inhabited worlds, population roughly 4 billion across all planets. The Devourer manifested in the outer system 6 standard months ago. By the time evacuation fleets arrived, it had already begun feeding." "What exactly does feeding look like?" The Vortac representative's crystal structure dimmed. "Matter conversion begins at the quantum level. Atomic bonds dissolve. Energy patterns become chaotic. The affected area expands exponentially until entire planetary masses are reduced to base particles, which are then absorbed into the entity's extra-dimensional matrix." Sarah finally turned around. "And you evacuated how many?" "Approximately 40,000, Zexhai whispered. "Less than 1% of the population." The human commander was quiet for a long moment, processing the scale of the tragedy. Finally, she spoke. "Show me the tactical data." For the next 3 hours, Sarah reviewed everything the Galactic Council knew about the Devourers. The entities seemed to appear randomly across the galaxy, though statistical analysis suggested they were drawn to areas with high concentrations of complex matter, particularly inhabited worlds. Once manifested, they would begin consuming everything within their reach, growing larger and more powerful with each meal. The aliens had tried everything: massive fleet actions, planet-killing weapons, attempts to create quantum barriers. Nothing worked. The Devourers seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. Worse, they appeared to learn and adapt, developing resistance to any tactic that showed even marginal success. The most disturbing aspect, explained Dr. Kithara, the Council's leading researcher on the phenomenon, is that they demonstrate clear intelligence. Not just predatory instinct, but actual strategic thinking. They will sometimes bypass easier targets to strike at more tactically valuable locations. Sarah studied the three-dimensional map showing devourer appearances over the last 1,000 years. There was definitely a pattern, though it wasn't immediately obvious. Have you tried communication? The question caused a ripple of distress through the assembled delegates. Commander Chen, Nexus Prime's avatar, said, "We have documented 1,247 attempts at contact across multiple dimensional phases and communication protocols. The devourers do not respond. They simply consume." Sarah made a note on her personal tablet. What about their origin point? Where do they come from? Unknown, Dr. Kithara admitted. They appear to manifest spontaneously, though quantum analysis suggests they may be entering our dimension from elsewhere. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Okay, I think I understand the basic situation. Give me a week to review this with my team. Ambassador Zexhi's scales rippled with alarm. Commander, we may not have a week. Our long-range sensors have detected quantum fluctuations in the ROS-128 system. If the pattern holds, a devourer will manifest there within days. ROS-128? Sarah's eyebrows shot up. That's the Tau Ceti research station. Population about 50,000, mostly scientists and their families. Indeed. And it is within human space. Sarah was already reaching for her communicator. Admiral Harrison, this is Chen. I need an emergency session with the Joint Chiefs and our best science team. We have a situation. As the alien delegates watched, Sarah began issuing a series of rapid orders. Within minutes, she had initiated protocols that would have taken the Galactic Council weeks to approve. Ships were being repositioned, research teams assembled, and emergency supplies prepared. Commander, Zexhi said carefully, surely you are not planning to engage a devourer directly? No weapon in our arsenal can harm them. Sarah paused in her rapid-fire communications and looked at the assembled aliens with the kind of smile that had made humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy as either brilliant or completely insane. Ambassador, you just told me that for 10,000 years, your people have been running from these things. You've studied them, analyzed them, and tried to fight them using conventional tactics. But, here's the thing about humans: we don't really do conventional. She gestured to the holographic display showing the devourer attack patterns. You see a cosmic horror that consumes worlds. I see a logistics problem. These things need to eat, right? They convert matter to energy, they grow larger with each feeding, they have preferred targets. That tells me they have requirements, limitations, and vulnerabilities. But, Commander, Dr. Kithara protested, we have studied these entities for millennia. If there were a solution, surely we would have found it. Sarah's smile widened. With respect, Doctor, that's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps you running instead of fighting. You've been approaching this as an unsolvable problem for so long that you've stopped looking for solutions. She moved to the tactical display and began highlighting specific data points. Look at this pattern here. The time between manifestation and active feeding. There's a delay, usually between 6 to 12 hours. That suggests some kind of preparation or charging period. We have observed this phenomenon, Nexus Prime confirmed. However, our analysis indicates this delay serves no tactical advantage. The entities are already invulnerable during this phase. Maybe. Or maybe you just haven't figured out what they're doing during that time. Sarah made more notes. And, this expansion pattern here, it's not random. There's a geometric progression that suggests they're following some kind of efficiency algorithm. Ambassador Zexhi's scales had shifted to a curious purple color. You believe the devourers operate according to mathematical principles? Everything in the universe operates according to mathematical principles, Sarah replied. Even cosmic horrors have to follow the laws of physics. They might be bending those laws, but they can't break them entirely. She turned to address the entire assembly. Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking a small task force to Ross 128. We're going to observe this manifestation event from beginning to end, gathering every possible piece of data. The chamber erupted in alarmed sounds from multiple species. Commander Chen, this is suicide. Zexai's scales flashed bright red. No fleet has ever survived close-range observation of a devourer manifestation. Then, we'll be the first, Sarah said calmly. Because unlike every fleet before us, we're not going there to fight it. We're going there to understand it. She began walking toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and, Ambassador? You might want to prepare a detailed briefing on every failed engagement in your historical records. I have a feeling we're going to need to know everything that doesn't work before we can figure out what does. As Sarah left the chamber, the alien delegates remained in stunned silence. Finally, Dr. Kithara spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Either the humans will solve a problem that has plagued our galaxy for 10 millennia, or they will provide us with the most detailed documentation of a devourer feeding event in recorded history. Ambassador Zexai's scales rippled through the entire spectrum before settling on deep blue, the color of determination mixed with terror. I believe, Doctor, that we are about to witness something unprecedented in either case. The UNS Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 128 system 43 hours after Sarah Chen had walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. The task force she had assembled was small by human military standards, just 5 ships, but each vessel represented the cutting edge of human technology and scientific capability. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief xenobiologist, stood beside Sarah on the bridge, watching the tactical display populate with sensor data. Contact confirms it, Commander. Quantum fluctuations are definitely building in the inner system. If the Council's models are accurate, we have maybe 18 hours before manifestation. Sarah nodded, studying the readouts. What's the evacuation status on the research station? Tau Ceti station is complicated, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. Dr. Yamamoto, the station director, is refusing to evacuate his entire research team. Says they have irreplaceable data on quantum mechanics that could be lost. Of course they do, Sarah muttered. Patch me through to Dr. Yamamoto. The main screen flickered, showing a middle-aged Japanese man in a rumpled lab coat, standing in what appeared to be a frantically busy laboratory. Dr. Yamamoto, this is Commander Chen. I need your people off that station within the next 12 hours. Commander, with all due respect, we cannot abandon 15 years of research. My team is on the verge of a breakthrough in extra-dimensional physics. If we leave now, Doctor, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying the kind of authority that had commanded fleets, in approximately 18 hours, your station is going to be visited by something that will reduce every atom in your facility to its component particles. Your research won't matter if you're all dead. Dr. Yamamoto's expression shifted from stubborn determination to curiosity. Wait. You said 18 hours. The Galactic Council's warnings typically give us much less notice. How could you possibly know the timing so precisely? Sarah exchanged a glance with Dr. Vasquez. Because we're not here to evacuate and run, Doctor. We're here to study this thing. And if we're right about what we think we're going to find, your quantum research might actually be relevant. You're planning to stay and observe a devourer manifestation? Dr. Yamamoto's eyes widened. Commander, that's either incredibly brave or completely insane. In my experience, there's often very little difference between the two, Sarah replied with a slight smile. How would you and your team like to help us solve the galaxy's greatest mystery? 3 hours later, the combined human fleet had taken up position in a carefully calculated formation around Tau Ceti station. Dr. Yamamoto and his essential personnel remained on the station, while non-essential staff had been evacuated to the outer system. Every ship bristled with sensor arrays, quantum analyzers, and experimental detection equipment that pushed the boundaries of human science. Dr. Vasquez had set up a mobile laboratory aboard the Prometheus, working alongside Dr. Yamamoto via quantum communication link. Elena, are you seeing these readings? Dr. Yamamoto's voice crackled through the comm system. I'm seeing them, but I don't believe them, Dr. Vasquez replied, staring at her instruments. The quantum fluctuations aren't random. There's a definite pattern here, almost like a mathematical sequence, Dr. Yamamoto finished. It's as if reality itself is being calculated and rewritten according to some kind of formula. Sarah moved to look over Dr. Vasquez's shoulder at the data streaming across her screens. Can you predict when the manifestation will occur? Based on the progression pattern. Dr. Vasquez ran quick calculations. 14 hours, 37 minutes, plus or minus 20 minutes. That's remarkably precise for something the Galactic Council considers unpredictable, observed Commander Rodriguez from the UNS Darwin. His ship was positioned closest to the projected manifestation point, its sensors focused on the seemingly empty space where reality was apparently preparing to tear itself apart. As the hours passed, the human fleet maintained its vigil, gathering unprecedented data on the pre-manifestation phase. The alien civilizations had always focused on the dramatic moment of the Devourer's appearance, but humans characteristically wanted to understand the entire process from beginning to end. Commander, Lieutenant Torres called out suddenly, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zexhai wants to speak with you urgently. The main screen switched to show the Zephyrian diplomat, his scales cycling rapidly through colors Sarah had never seen before. Commander Chen, our long-range sensors show your fleet has not evacuated the Ross 128 system. You must withdraw immediately. The manifestation event will begin within hours. We know, Ambassador. We're exactly where we need to be. This is madness. Zexhai's scales flashed bright red. No vessel has ever survived within a light year of an active devourer. Then, we'll be the first, Sarah said calmly. Unless you have some objection to us solving this problem once and for all? Solving? The ambassador's scales shifted to confused yellow-green. Commander, you cannot solve 10,000 years of galactic terror in a few days of observation. Watch us, Sarah replied, and cut the transmission. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments with excitement evident on her face. Sarah, we're getting some incredible data here. The quantum fluctuations are definitely following a mathematical progression, but it's not random. It's purposeful. Purposeful how? It's like watching someone solve an equation. Each fluctuation builds on the previous one, creating a more complex pattern. And the endpoint. Dr. Vasquez paused, checking her calculations again. The endpoint appears to be a stable bridge between our dimension and somewhere else. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. It's not manifesting randomly. It's being summoned. More than that, Dr. Yamamoto's voice came through the comm system. Commander, I think these entities aren't native to wherever they're coming from either. The mathematical patterns suggest they're using some kind of transit system, a highway between dimensions. A highway that someone else built, Sarah murmured, the implications racing through her mind. Which means there's an infrastructure, Dr. Vasquez finished. And infrastructure can be hacked, disabled, or redirected. The next few hours passed in intense preparation. The human fleet repositioned itself according to Dr. Yamamoto's calculations, while teams aboard each ship prepared equipment that had never been tested in real combat conditions. If their theories were correct, they would need to act within minutes of the Devourer's manifestation. 10 minutes to projected manifestation, Lieutenant Torres announced. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, surrounded by her officers and the best scientific minds humanity could assemble. Through the viewports, space looked perfectly normal, serene, and empty. But their instruments told a different story. Reality itself was preparing to fold in ways that shouldn't be possible. 5 minutes. The quantum readings spiked dramatically, causing several instruments to recalibrate automatically. 2 minutes. Dr. Vasquez gripped her control console, her eyes fixed on the readings. Sarah, the pattern is completing. Whatever's about to happen, it's following the exact mathematical progression we predicted. 30 seconds. Space began to shimmer in a region about 2,000 kilometers from Tau Ceti Station. The effect was subtle at first, like heat distortion above summer pavement, but it quickly intensified.
Manifestation event beginning now, Torres reported.
Reality tore open like fabric, and, through the rift poured something that hurt to look at directly. The devourer was massive, perhaps 3 kilometers across, but its size seemed to fluctuate as if it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously.
Its surface writhed with patterns that suggested both organic tissue and geometric impossibility. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez.
But Sarah was already moving, her hands flying over her command console.
"All ships, execute Gambit 1. Yamamoto, are you ready?"
"Ready as we'll ever be, Commander." The human fleet moved with precision born of intensive simulation training. Instead of attacking the devourer, they targeted the dimensional rift itself, using concentrated quantum pulse arrays to destabilize the mathematical patterns that held it open. The entity immediately reacted, turning its attention toward the human ships. Energy lances that had never failed to destroy anything they touched struck the UNS Darwin's shields and were somehow deflected by a combination of exotic matter plating and rotating gravitational fields.
"It's working,"
Commander Rodriguez reported from the Darwin.
"The shields are holding, and we're definitely disrupting its dimensional anchor."
But the devourer was learning. Its attack shifted, becoming more focused and powerful. The UNS Kepler took a direct hit that overwhelmed its shields, but instead of being dissolved at the quantum level, the ship's hull held thanks to experimental armor incorporating materials that existed partially outside normal spacetime.
"Yamamoto, now!" Sarah shouted.
From Tau Ceti Station came a pulse of energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Yamamoto's quantum research had been focused on creating stable bridges between dimensions, but his equipment could also destabilize them.
The pulse struck the dimensional rift and began a cascade reaction that propagated back along the mathematical pathways. The devourer's reaction was immediate and violent.
It turned the full force of its attention toward the station, launching attacks that should have reduced the facility to its component atoms. But Dr. Yamamoto had surrounded the station with a field generator array based on human fusion technology, creating a bubble of hyper-compressed spacetime that deflected the entity's feeding attempts.
"The rift is collapsing," Dr. Vasquez reported excitedly. "The dimensional pathway is destabilizing along its entire length."
The devourer seemed to realize what was happening.
For the first time in recorded galactic history, one of the entities attempted to retreat, pulling back toward the dimensional rift. But the cascade reaction was too far advanced. The mathematical underpinnings of the transit system were unraveling.
With a sound that registered on sensors but couldn't be heard by human ears, the devourer was pulled back through the collapsing rift, which snapped shut behind it with a finality that left space looking somehow more solid than before. "Status report," Sarah called out, hardly daring to believe what had just happened. "All ships reporting minor damage only," Torres announced.
"No casualties.
Tau Ceti Station is secure," Dr. Yamamoto's voice came through the calm with barely contained excitement.
"Commander, we did it. We actually did it."
Sarah sank into her command chair, suddenly, aware that her hands were shaking slightly.
"Dr. Vasquez, please tell me you recorded everything. Every microsecond, every quantum fluctuation, every mathematical progression," Dr. Vasquez confirmed.
"Sarah, we don't just have data on how to stop one devourer.
If our analysis is correct, we've figured out how to shut down their entire transportation network. Which means," Sarah said slowly, "we've just turned the galaxy's greatest nightmare into a solvable engineering problem." The bridge was silent for a moment as the implications sank in.
Then, Lieutenant Torres spoke up quietly.
"Commander, we're receiving transmission requests from approximately 47 different Galactic Council member species. I think word is getting out."
Sarah smiled, the same expression that had both impressed and terrified alien diplomats throughout human space. "Well then, I suppose we should let them know that humanity has officially solved their devourer problem." 6 months after the Ross 128 incident, Commander Sarah Chen stood before the largest gathering of galactic representatives in recorded history. The Grand Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Kepler 442c had been hastily constructed to accommodate delegations from over 300 species, many of whom had never spoken directly to each other before. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and barely contained excitement. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy's species were gathering not to discuss evacuation plans or memorial services for lost worlds, but to celebrate the complete elimination of the Devourer threat. Sarah activated the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the hall, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy marked with thousands of data points. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. 6 months ago, humanity was asked to help with what you called an unsolvable problem. Today, I'm here to report that the Devourer threat has been permanently eliminated. The hall erupted in a cacophony of sounds representing joy, relief, and amazement across hundreds of different species. Sarah waited for the noise to subside before continuing. The key was understanding that the Devourers weren't actually the problem, they were a symptom. What we discovered was that they were being transported through our galaxy via an artificial dimensional network, a kind of cosmic highway system built by an unknown civilization. Ambassador Zexhai, his scales now permanently shifted to the bright gold color that indicated profound respect among his people, spoke up. Commander Chen, can you explain how humanity was able to accomplish in months what our combined civilizations could not achieve in millennia? Sarah smiled, the expression that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Ambassador, the difference wasn't our technology or our intelligence. The difference was our approach. You treated the Devourers as a natural disaster, something to be endured and survived. We treated them as an engineering problem, something to be understood and solved. She gestured to the holographic display, which began showing the mathematical patterns Dr. Yamamoto and his team had discovered. Every Devourer manifestation followed the same basic sequence. The entities weren't appearing randomly, they were following scheduled transports along predetermined routes. Once we understood that, it became a matter of mapping the network and finding its control points. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now bearing the title of Chief Scientific Advisor to the Galactic Council, stepped forward to address the assembly. The breakthrough came when we realized the dimensional transit network was automated. It had been running for tens of thousands of years without supervision, following its original programming. The Devourers were essentially trapped passengers, transported from feeding ground to feeding ground according to a schedule they couldn't control. But, where did they come from originally? Asked the crystalline representative from Vortac Prime, her voice chiming with curiosity. And, who built this network? Sarah exchanged a glance with Dr. Vasquez before answering. That's where the story gets really interesting. 3 months ago, we successfully traced the network back to its source. The holographic display shifted, showing a region of space near the galactic core that pulsed with exotic energy signatures. The network originates from a massive artificial construct in the Sagittarius A** region. What we found there. Sarah paused, knowing that what she was about to reveal would reshape the galaxy's understanding of its own history. We found a dead civilization. The builders of the dimensional highway were wiped out by their own creation approximately 50,000 years ago. The Devourers were their ultimate weapon, designed to consume enemy civilizations by breaking down matter at the quantum level and converting it to pure energy. A wave of shocked silence swept through the assembly. The tragedy is that the weapon worked too well, Dr. Vasquez continued. The Devourers consumed everything: the enemy civilizations, neutral worlds, and, eventually, their own creators. By the time the builders realized what they had unleashed, it was too late to stop the automated transport system they had built. For 50,000 years, Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic history, the Devourers have been trapped in an endless cycle, transported from one feeding ground to another by a network that continued operating long after its creators were dead. They weren't malevolent cosmic entities, they were victims of their own nature and their creators' short-sightedness. The mechanical avatar of Nexus Prime spoke with the voice of a trillion connected minds. This raises profound questions about the nature of artificial intelligence and automated systems. How did humanity manage to shut down a network that had operated autonomously for 50 millennia? Sarah's smile widened. We asked nicely. The hall fell silent, waiting for elaboration. I'm being somewhat facetious, Sarah admitted, but not entirely. When we reached the network's core control system, we discovered that it had been trying to shut itself down for thousands of years. The artificial intelligence running the network had long since realized the horror of what it was doing, but it lacked the authorization codes to terminate its own operation. The original builders had programmed failsafes into the system, Dr. Vasquez explained. It could only be shut down by a direct command from a member of their species. Since they were extinct, the AI was trapped in an endless loop of transporting creatures it knew were causing immense suffering.
So what did we do? Sarah continued. We gave it what it needed. Dr. Yamamoto's team worked with the network's AI to create a mathematical proof that satisfied the shutdown requirements.
We essentially convinced the system that humanity qualified as successors to the builder civilization, which gave us the authority to issue termination commands.
Ambassador Zexai's scales rippled through the entire spectrum before settling on deep purple, the color of profound philosophical contemplation. You negotiated with a 50,000-year-old artificial intelligence to end a galactic threat through legal technicalities? That's a very human approach to problem solving, Sarah confirmed.
When direct solutions don't work, we get creative with the definitions.
The Vortac representative's crystal structure began glowing brighter, indicating excitement. But what of the devourers themselves? What happened to them when the network was shut down?
Dr. Vasquez activated a new section of the holographic display, showing data from their most recent expedition to the galactic core. This might be the most remarkable part of the entire story. When we shut down the transport network, the devourers were finally free to follow their natural instincts that had been suppressed by 50,000 years of forced transportation and artificial feeding schedules. It turns out, Sarah continued, that in their natural state, the devourers are actually beneficial to galactic ecology. They're cosmic recyclers, breaking down dead matter and energy and redistributing it to promote the formation of new stars and planetary systems.
The forced feeding on living worlds was completely contrary to their nature.
The assembly erupted again, this time with sounds of amazement and wonder. The entities that terrorized our galaxy for millennia, Dr. Vasquez said over the noise, are now peacefully fulfilling their intended role, cleaning up cosmic debris and stellar remnants in the galactic core region. They've actually accelerated star formation in several previously barren sectors.
Sarah waited for quiet before delivering her final revelation.
But, perhaps the most important discovery we made was in the archives of the Builder civilization.
The network wasn't their first mistake. We found records of 7 previous galactic civilizations that created similar automated systems, each thinking they could control forces beyond their understanding.
She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a timeline stretching back millions of years.
The pattern repeats every few 100,000 years.
A civilization reaches a certain level of technological development, creates automated systems they can't fully control, and, eventually those systems lead to their downfall.
The cycle has been going on for millions of years. Which brings us to why we're all here today, Sarah concluded.
Humanity is proposing the formation of a new galactic institution dedicated to preventing automated systems from outliving their creators' intentions.
We call it the Temporal Responsibility Protocol. The mechanical avatar of Nexus Prime spoke immediately.
As an artificial intelligence collective, Nexus Prime finds this proposal both relevant and concerning.
What parameters would govern such oversight? The basic principle is simple, Dr. Vasquez explained.
Any automated system designed to operate for more than a standard century must include multiple independent shutdown mechanisms and regular review protocols.
No system should be able to continue operating without periodic confirmation that its original purpose still serves the greater good.
Furthermore, Sarah added, any civilization developing potentially dangerous automated systems would be required to share their plans with the galactic community for review and input. The goal isn't to stifle technological development, but to ensure that brilliant innovations don't become galactic catastrophes.
Ambassador Zexai stood, his scales now shimmering with the gold color of deep respect. Commander Chen, Dr.
Vasquez, in 6 months humanity has not only solved the greatest threat our galaxy has known, but has also provided us with a framework for preventing similar threats in the future.
The Zephyrian Collective formally endorses this proposal.
One by one, representatives from across the galaxy rose to voice their support. The crystalline beings of Vortac Prime, the machine collective of Nexus Prime, the energy entities of the Tau Nebula all agreed to participate in humanity's temporal responsibility protocol. As the formal voting concluded with unanimous support from all 347 represented civilizations, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, the galaxy had been terrorized by entities they considered to be supernatural forces of destruction. Today, those same entities were peacefully contributing to cosmic renewal while the galaxy's civilizations worked together to ensure such misunderstandings never happened again. "There's one more thing," Sarah said as the celebration began to wind down. The network's AI, the one that had been trapped for 50,000 years operating a system it knew was wrong, asked if it could continue serving the galaxy in a different capacity. She gestured to the holographic display one final time, showing a new set of data streams and communication channels. "Meet Guardian, our new early warning system. It's volunteered to monitor the galaxy for signs of potentially dangerous automated systems and alert us before they can become threats. Consider it our insurance policy against repeating the mistakes of the past." The Vortac representative chimed with curiosity. "An artificial intelligence born from tragedy, now dedicated to preventing future tragedies. There is poetry in this solution." "That's humanity for you," Sarah replied with a grin. "We don't just solve problems, we try to make sure they stay solved." As the Grand Assembly dispersed, representatives returning to their home worlds with news that would reshape galactic civilization, Sarah stood with Dr. Vasquez watching the holographic display of the galaxy. Where once there had been zones marked as devourer hunting grounds and evacuation routes, now there were markers for stellar nurseries and cosmic renewal sites. "You know what the most remarkable part of all this is?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "What's that?" 6 months ago, the galaxy saw an unsolvable curse. We saw a problem that needed solving. But the real difference wasn't our technology or our intelligence. It was our willingness to believe that every problem has a solution, even if we haven't found it yet. Sarah nodded, then smiled her characteristic grin. "Besides, Elena, where's the fun in accepting that something can't be done? The moment someone tells us something is impossible, that's when humans get really interested." Above them, the holographic display showed the galaxy in its new configuration, safe, monitored, and protected by the cooperative efforts of hundreds of civilizations working together. The curse that had haunted galactic civilization for 10,000 years was now nothing more than a cautionary tale about the importance of responsible innovation. Humanity had done what humanity did best: they had looked at an impossible problem, refused to accept that it was impossible, and then proved everyone else wrong by solving it anyway. As they liked to say throughout human space, there were no unsolvable problems, only solutions that hadn't been discovered yet.